This is My First Job in Sports web series, presented by SBR Net, your comprehensive source for sports data to the academic community. Here are the hosts of My First Job in Sports, Neil Schwartz and Dr. Lyndsey Darvin.
You're listening or watching, of course, the current episode of My First Job in Sports. And no, that is not my normal co-host, Dr. Lyndsey Darvin. That is my daughter, Melissa Schwartz. Melissa shares a lot of sports things with me. She's been a sports fan all her life. Melissa, give us a little bit about your background. And then, there's a couple of things I think we can talk about with respect to women's sports right now, because right now women's sports are like the hottest topic. And then we'll get to our interview with Gerard D'Ambrosio, who is manager of ticket sales for the Inter Miami team for Major League Soccer. So, Melissa, it's all yours.
So thank you. I will start out with two disclaimers. One, as you've already could tell and pointed out, I am not Lyndsey Darvin, and I am not a doctor, nor do I claim to be one here on this podcast. I've been your daughter for 37 and a half years. A lot of my interest in sports since I was a kid up until adulthood, certainly shaped by you. Playing sports, you coaching me in sports. A lot of our relationship, I think, is based in sports. We play golf together. We talk a lot about sports. And so it's a big part of, I think, not just our life, but our relationship. And I think that's a really, I think a lot of men, they always root for having sons because they want to coach them on the teams. And they want to have that common bond of sports. And it's funny, I always think like girls can play sports too. We're seeing that now all the time. And certainly, you could speak to, we used to sit and watch sports together all the time when I was a kid growing up. And you coached my soccer games, hockey games, whatever it was. So I think that's like an important thing for people to know is that like girls like sports too. A lot of my girlfriends and I, we talk a lot about sports. Little bit about me, I guess. Went to University of Florida, go Gators during the Tebow years, some very formative years, and probably the best, I would say, I stuck around for a fifth year to be in any school or major university in the college sports era. So although it's been a little bit rough to be a Gator fan since I graduated. Always wanted to be in construction, tough industry to break into. In some cases, I think very similar to sports in that way. Particularly, I wanted to be in New York City, which is kind of like, the Super Bowl of construction and real estate, to use a sports analogy. It was really tough to get from the University of Florida to New York. A lot of the things that I think you'll hear people talk about with regard to how to break into sports and like career advice, I think that holds true. It certainly, in my experience, it does. Went to go work for a big company that built skyscrapers in New York City, shaped the skyline, and then stumbled upon a major construction company that did construction of stadiums, arenas, and sports facilities, which was super exciting for me. Because again, it brought like my love of sports into my professional life in a way that I didn't expect to ever be the case.
I remember the picture you sent me standing in the big hole where they were digging out for SoFi Stadium, and you look like a little ant, Of
all so I've never built anything in my life. I've always been on the business side, but I would tell you that the construction site I visited most was when we were constructing the stadium for the LA Rams. And the Chargers. And I didn't even live in LA. So there you go. I have a lot of fun facts I could tell you about that stadium and the building of it.
Well, so over the last couple of weeks, you and I have been trading a lot of messages back and forth, whether it's been via text or even on Instagram about, what you're seeing happening. And of course, my co-host, who's currently under the weather, Dr. Lyndsey Darvin, wrote a great article for Forbes. And you comment a lot on that. Do you want to kind of add a little bit to that?
Yeah, so it's funny. It came up on my LinkedIn, and I read the article, and then I realized after I read it that it was and I texted you, I think, and I said, "Isn't this your co-host on your podcast that wrote this?" So I read the article and loved the article before I even knew that you knew the person who wrote it. But what I loved most about it is there was so much about what Lyndsey talks about in her article that obviously is so relevant today in the context of women's sports and what was happening in, women's basketball and Caitlin Clark. But, I think a lot of what she was saying, I found to be so true and really resonated with me with regard to being a woman in a male dominated industry. I think it's true regardless of whether you're in a female or male dominated industry, but, specifically around the way that men in society expect a woman to behave in a certain way and how that was really being shaken up. And I think I've certainly felt that so much in my career as I've tried to, rise the ranks, so to speak, and, having been in the C-suite at several big and small companies and being a woman and kind of breaking that mold, so to speak. And so I think a lot of what Lyndsey talks about in her article was super relevant. Sent it around to a bunch of my girlfriends. We had I did not submit, I hope you don't disown me for saying this, Dad, but I did not submit a bracket for March Madness for the men or the women.
How about the Masters?
Hold on. I do every year facilitate a pool for my girlfriends. We do a March Madness pool every year. I just stopped playing because I've never been good at it. I don't like doing things I'm not good at, apparently.
All right.
But I facilitate it. So, in our group chat, a lot of talking about, obviously, I said, we screwed up this year, ladies. We needed to do a women's basketball bracket. So we'll definitely be doing one next year. But, sent the article that Lyndsey wrote around. And obviously, you and I were having a lot of conversation back and forth that I was relaying to my girlfriends in this group about, what we were seeing happening with, women's sports just getting, the attention that I think it's deserved for a very long time. And it's really exciting, I think, for the rest of the world to finally be catching up.
So let's get to our interview with Gerard D'Ambrosio. Before we go, I want to thank my daughter, Melissa Schwartz, for pitching in while Dr. Lyndsey is under the weather. Hopefully she will be back in her regular seat in Syracuse, New York next week. And we will go from there. But Melissa, thank you. And we are really excited and lucky today to have Gerard D'Ambrosio III. Gerard is currently the ticket manager or ticket sales for Inter Miami Football Club. And Gerard, that right now has to be one of the best jobs in sports. Tell us, before we get started and talking about that great job, and of course, I'm going to talk about Messi a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and really your kind of relationship to sports and your relationship to soccer.
For sure. And Neil, thank you for having me. Melissa, thank you for having me. Super excited to be a part of this. A little bit of my background, I'm actually a Jersey boy, right back Old Bridge, New Jersey. I always say it's Central Jersey. A lot of people think that's not a real place. I will live and die by the fact that it is. It's the only real part of Jersey, but that's another conversation. And as I got started, I was a big sports fanatic growing up. I loved baseball, basketball. Oddly enough, the one sport that I didn't really play was soccer or football. Depends on where you are in the world. So it was really interesting. I ended up going to school at American University, running cross country and track. So that's where the big passion from sports really set in the stone. I didn't know that I was going to have the sports career that I did. I knew I was going to, strive for something really great, but it's really morphed into something crazy at this point.
You said you went to American, and I know, of course, American, our mutual, your professor, my mutual friend, Matt Winkler, is a big part of that program. How did you get to American, and why did you decide that was the school for you?
For sure. So American has a Division I cross country and track program, and that was definitely a big part of my decision making. But on the other side, I wanted to make sure I went to a great school. I looked at a couple other colleges where I really liked the team, I liked the coaching staff, but I felt that the school didn't match the athletics department. And I felt that I found a nice balance between the two. And any young athlete, any high school athlete could tell you the concept of going Division I is something that is on your mind when you're a high school athlete. And that was definitely something that was really important to me. So finding a really good blend of both a great school and a great athletics program that was going to grow me in both ways was really important, and how I ended up in DC.
Give me a little bit of your job history out of school. So it's you graduate American University and you go where?
So I have a really unique situation. I was one of the COVID graduates. So COVID happened my senior year of college, threw everyone for a loop. And I had gotten hired for the Miami Dolphins in December of 2019 to start in June 2020. And I was so excited for it going into my senior semester, second semester, and I'm good. I have a job. I know plenty of people are really trying to fight for it. All of a sudden in March, COVID happens. No one knows what's going on. I get reassured time and time again, hey, listen, you guaranteed to have a job. You guaranteed to have a job. The issue was that no one knew what was happening. So unfortunately, the Dolphins had to make a business decision. They couldn't bring in new people, especially for live sporting events during that time. So a week before graduation, I get told, hey, by the way, we can't bring you in anymore. So I went from having 5 to 6 months of I have a job, I'm great for college and a post-collegiate, and now I don't. So luckily, networking was a big part of my passion and a part of the way I handled my junior and senior year more specifically. So when I reached out to a guy, Danny Stowen, he was a really awesome guy. He's a U.S. diplomat, but he spoke in our negotiation class. I ended up talking to him about my situation, and he's like, hey, I know you have a marketing background. You studied marketing. I might have someone who could help you out. And I'm like, for sure. Like, let's talk about it. And he sent me the job description, and no lie, it said badass techie marketer. And I'm like, what is this? And it ended up being a growth marketing associate at a company called Rasa.io, which is an awesome startup out of New Orleans. And that's where I spent right around 8 to 9 months there. Very much back-end marketing. It was very analytical in nature, a little bit different from where I think my core strengths are, but it was an awesome learning opportunity. And then the Dolphins came next, again, about 9 months later.
Melissa and I, interestingly enough, are both Dolphin fans. I mean, let me tell you, we have suffered through years and years of being Dolphin fans. But look, this isn't about us. This is all about you. But, the one thing that's interesting about your background is that you seem to really gravitate to sales. Was that always where you thought you were going to land, or did you see yourself, in another area? Because, one of the things I talk to a lot of students over the course of, every week, because we do provide data, and I talk to them about how great sales is for an entry level. Tell me a little bit about your sales experience and why you think it really worked for you.
Neil, I want to bet you $100 if you could find one person that said, hey, I want to be a salesperson when I grow up from the ages of 10 or under, $100 on me, guaranteed. Because there's nobody in the world that said, I want to be a salesperson. It's just not part of the DNA. It's not one of those types of careers. And that's okay, because it's a widely misunderstood career. So when I was in college and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I was running and I realized, hey, I'm not good enough to go pro. I was dealing with some injuries. And even if you did go pro in running, they don't really make a ton of money. So as I was going through, I'm like, what's next? In an internship I had in college with a company called G.O.A.T Sports, they're an adult social sports league. I made some amazing friends, mentors, colleagues there. It was a lot of great relationships from that group. I worked on a partnership with District Taco. It was a local taco spot, and it was something really small. It was a cross-promotional partnership where if you wore your Zog Sports shirt after one of the games, you would get 20% off an offer under $15 after a game.
You can get free tacos?
No,
come
not
on.
free. I mean, come on. I was an intern. So, and on the contrary,
there's no free lunch. There's no such thing as
never free lunch. But on the contrary, for District Taco, if you used the District Taco code for a Zog Sports League, you got 15% off the league. I was so excited about it. As an intern, I was working with their director of marketing. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. 0 people used it. I tried to use it once, and they're like, the code's broken. It doesn't work. So it was a humbling experience, but that's where my passion for partnerships started. So then from there, I'm like, can I get a hold of anyone who does partnerships in sports? Because I see all the names of the buildings, I see the signage, but I don't really know the industry. Little did I know, it's sales is a way to get there.
Tell me a little bit about also, you mentioned you work for a startup, and Melissa, I know, actually has worked for 2 startups now. I guess, Melissa, your experience, you're in your second startup. Tell us a little bit about the experience you gained working for a startup. It's one of those things where sometimes you've got to do everything from sales and marketing to, I hate to say it, empty the trash cans.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I never want to be too big for anything. I never want to get to a point in my career, in my life where, hey, I don't do that anymore.
Right.
I think a great way to garner respect from the people around you is to go above and beyond, no matter who you are, no matter what position you are, no matter what experience you have. But when I worked in a startup, the beauty of a startup is they entrust you with a lot and they have no choice but to do so. And when you're in that situation, you have to just figure things out. And when you have a boss who also is likely working on a lot of their own projects, they don't have time for you to bug them every other 30 minutes to say, hey, I need help with this. Hey, I need help with that. You have to learn, hey, listen, this is really an impasse that I can't get through. Or there was times where I was teaching myself SQL, watching YouTube videos. There was times where I was learning new Excel formulas. There was times where I was learning a whole new software, which was a tremendous growth opportunity. But I think you just understand from just taking your time with that type of experience, hey, listen, I have to take advantage of this opportunity rather than complaining that I don't have enough resources, that I don't have enough guidance, because that's a great way to get into a really negative headspace, and it's gonna take a lot away from you.
How'd you make the jump though from the Miami Dolphins now to Inter Miami with the MLS? Because while I could talk about this whole Messi situation, I probably spent hours doing various analytics, looking at what I thought the whole Messi situation was going to mean for fans, and I ran all sorts of different models. And by the way, they all came out really positive. But tell us about the jump from the Dolphins to Inter Miami.
Sure. So I spent a little over 2 years at the Dolphins, and I love the Dolphins. This is going to sound terrible, but I grew up watching the Jets, but I wasn't like a big NFL fan. So when I went to the Dolphins being the first team that gave me my job in sports, I'm like, I'm a Dolphins fan. And that's taboo. Making a jump in the division is taboo. But
Yep.
I am still this day a Dolphins fan, have a bunch of love for those people, because with the Dolphins, they teach an amazing system. It's very developmental. They give you the opportunity to be competitive, but also they give you an opportunity to fail because they have the resources to do so, which I think is really great for a specific type of individual. And I fit that mold at the time. But I started to find, while I wanted to go into partnerships, I also was really enjoying ticket sales, and I was enjoying the opportunity to be a leader for my teammates. So I started having an interest in sales leadership. As soon as I brought this up to my manager, our director, a month later, I get a call from an old friend, a former colleague from the Dolphins as well. And she's like, hey, did you see that Inter Miami's hiring a manager of ticket sales? I'm like, no, I didn't. And she's like, hey, I think you should apply. I actually recommended you to who was the VP at the time, Kenny Stolberg. I knew Kenny really well. Emma Taylor, the one who recommended me the role, I really trusted her as well. So I'm like, all right, let me call Kenny. That one call, within 2 weeks, I had an offer. And I'm like, whoa, I was not expecting this. And at the time, this was pre-Messi. This is last place MLS team in its third, going into its fourth year. It is a very different scenario. But I went to the Dolphins and I said, hey, listen, I have much love for you guys. I have much love for this organization. I don't feel like I'm done here, but this is an amazing opportunity. How long would it take me to get a similar role? And they basically said, hey, it's going to take 3 to 4 years if there's an organizational need. So after having that dialogue with them, it made sense to make the jump. And a little over a year later, been trying to make the most of it.
In your experience, what are some of the common mistakes that you think students make when they're doing their job search process? What are some of the mistakes you made, you think, and things that maybe you did that went really well that you would recommend others follow?
There's no one way to get a job because so many organizations are so different. But the biggest mistake I make is people are searching for the job and not the people. The people hire you. The people bring you along, and more often than not, they see a job and they see a logo, and it maybe, again, Inter Miami right now is a sexy brand. It's a sexy logo. So people are like, oh my God, I want to be on the team that Messi plays for. I want to be on that. It's, hey, listen, it has nothing to do with what's going on with the team because you don't sell that. That's not your job function. So as you go through that process, you want to take that step back and understand, who am I going to be working with? Who's developing me?
Yeah.
What's most important for me?
Yep.
And if you start looking at your job search that way, you'll find more opportunities and you'll find more long-term solutions for yourself.
The interesting thing is, we talk to students all the time, and, I talk to them about how there's no one pathway to get into the sports business. There's so many different pathways. Gerard, you seem to have had a really open mind during this entire process. I mean, was it always open? Were you always open-minded like that, or did you just find that, you know what, if I wanted to get that job in sports, I had to have an open mind?
So it was really interesting. I narrowed in on partnerships, knowing that there's no way that I was going to go into partnership sales off the rip,
sure,
unless you go into the minor leagues. The minor leagues would potentially take that shot on a partnership seller right out of college.
Right.
Any professional major league would not. So I'm like, all right, cool. What are the options? And I just networked with so many people that had been successful in the partnerships world. And they said, hey, listen, you have to have sales experience. And a lot of people said ticket sales was a great path. And I'll never forget, I was meeting with the VP of partnerships at the Dolphins in my first couple of weeks there. And I told them that I was in ticket sales because I talked to so many people in the industry, and they said, that's the best way to do it. And he's like, I don't believe that at all. And I'm like, I was so baffled. I'm like, wait, what? Like, I picked this whole career path and you don't think it's a good idea and you're the VP of partnerships? And he had just said, he's like, I did it through the minor leagues. And he goes, I made my way that way. And that was an option. And I didn't hear that option going in. So I think students inevitably are going to be very malleable, especially when they're hearing from different people. And that's why I say, talk to a lot of different people. So if you're going to be shaped by every single conversation, you don't want to be shaped by only a select few. You want to be shaped by a lot of different conversations and start to build your perspective off of that. And then that's why you want to go intern as well, because you need real world experience too.
What sorts of skills and experiences do you encourage students to obtain before they graduate?
Skills and experiences. That's a good one, Melissa. First and foremost, if you're doing internships are, I don't want to say necessary, but pretty close to it. Yeah. I always say, try to go to a really big organization and try to go to a relatively small organization.
Yeah.
The big organization is going to teach you that high level structure. They're going to teach you a certain level of professionalism. They're going to teach you what a corporate structure feels like. And some people are going to feel at home there. They're going to feel supported there. They're going to feel that guidance. And if your personality likes that and is closer to that, you're going to do really well. Then you go to that smaller company, maybe that startup type environment, which is a little bit more where Inter Miami is, believe it or not. And I can get into that later on. But when you're in that more startup type culture, that smaller family style, if you will, you understand being in the deep end, maybe not getting that same type of support, but having no choice but to grow. And you understand, all right, cool. Like, I know what those two are like. Now I can make my choice. Hey, where do I want to take my career? If you only do one and you only know one, you start to specialize in one and you don't even realize your potential in the other. College is the perfect place to fail. It's made for that. Obviously, you're hoping to succeed more often than not, but it's the safety net to fail. And you got to utilize it to the best of your ability, because there's not going to be too many other times where in a professional setting, you're given the opportunity to fail consistently.
I couldn't agree more with everything you've said. And while my career isn't in the sports world, it's very sports-like. So in construction, very male-dominated, can be really tough industry. Certainly as a woman, tough to break into. Similarly, also, I graduated during a time, during a recession. So getting a job and having the start of your career not be what you thought. Those are all things that I feel like we've had a very similar kind of experience. But I think you're so spot on about all of the things you said. Specifically the open-mindedness. I think I always tell people I've never would have thought that my career, the steps I've taken were the steps I would have taken. You've got to be open-minded to see the on and off ramps of your career and that you're going in the right direction, but it might look a little different. I think the networking thing is so spot on. I'm always so impressed by a lot of the younger generation these days when they reach out and they want to network with you. Like, I find that to be so impressive. And I think that kids out of college tend to be scared to do that because they think they're bothering someone, but I think they underestimate how much people love to talk about themselves. They want to help, and people not being scared to like ask the questions or ask for help. And the thing you said about following good people, I think that's like so true. Like, whoever you hitch your wagon to, like, they're going to take you on their journey with you. If you're working for someone who's really ambitious, like, that's going to open up doors for you. Someone who really has a vested interest in wanting you to grow and develop, and not just like, hey, do this job and that's it. So I think you hit on some really important things for sure that I totally agree with.
100%. Yeah. And I always chuckle, we talk about the Miami Heat and the Big Three era. They wanted to team up with their friends. In the professional world, you start making enough relationships, you start growing, you're going to team up with your friends in a professional setting down the line. Totally. So you got to be open to it.
I do it all the time. I love work as I've grown in my career. I love partnering with friends. It's so much more fun to work with people you like to work with. It doesn't feel like work. It's just fun. So I agree. Yeah, totally.
So there's a question I ask all the time, Gerard, and I talk about, I want you to harken back a little bit to your days at American. Was there anything that you wish you had, any courses you wish you had taken, or any skills that you wish you would have developed while you were at American that you just, didn't really think of or didn't bother to do?
Yeah, it wasn't that I didn't do it. I just didn't do it well enough. And I think the big thing that stands out is Excel. It's crazy, like how simple that is. And it's something that was part of your coursework. And I did a good job of it. But when you're getting into your career, it just opens up every door or close to it. You can go into a finance world. You can go into a data world. You can go into so many different areas by just having that expertise. And It's just transferable. I think when you learn certain things and you get locked in on certain things, like, your career can change in an instant. There's not that many skills that are overly transferable outside of communication and some hard skills like Excel. And communication is always the big one, but even that can be taught to a certain level. Luckily, that was something that I was already coming in with, but the more that you can build out that as well is really important.
You're really resonating with me. I've lived in Excel a lot of my career, starting as an analyst and then going into the finance track and eventually becoming a CFO. Like, people with bad Excel skills, it makes me nervous. And I think it's so transferable, and regardless of what your job is. So you really definitely hit a nice chord for me.
It's kind of ironic. I can't tell you how many times. And look, I'm good with Excel and I'm really good with data, but let's face it, I'm a little older than everybody here. And, so many times I've reached out to Melissa to get help on, whether it's to clean data or get some things done. So, I think you're spot on, Gerard, with Excel skills, or even just general data handling skills, how to handle data.
For sure. And Melissa was saying it was your 21st birthday today, so you're not that old. It's all good.
Yeah. You're a good liar.
If we have to, he's in sales.
Hopefully that's not what we're thinking here of salespeople. That's what we're trying to change these days.
No.
You convinced me for a minute that he is only 21. And sometimes he is truly 21 at heart at times. So I think there's some truth in what you said.
Yeah, I try to keep myself thinking, and in my heart, I'm a lot younger, and in my head, I'm a lot younger than I am in real life. I picked Melissa up at the airport last night. We were talking about that, and it was one of those things we definitely agreed on. Hey, look, before I kind of have my last question and all that, tell me about the day your entire world changed when Lionel Messi signs with Inter Miami.
It was mayhem. It was one of the most surreal experiences that I've ever dealt with professionally. I was told the night prior, and I was at 11 p.m. at night. Our phones were going off the hooks. I'm in my apartment. creating a training because we had just hired 5 brand new inside sales reps 2 days prior.
Yeah.
So I wake up the next morning and we're with our VP, Kenny. He tells the team, and I go, Kenny, I know that there's a question that the inside sales team is going to be afraid to ask, but I want to ask, is there any chance that they jump on the phones today with our demand? No chance. There is no chance that they jump on the phones. So I'm like, all right, I have my onboarding. I'm ready to go on board. I start getting calls to my cell phone of numbers I don't have, of people that were well off. I'm like, how are people getting my cell phone number? What's happening right now? I'm starting to get emails. I'm starting to get everything. And the news officially comes out. I call Kenny and I'm like, there's no shot. So we have all of them who don't know how to use like all the technology. I'm helping them run payments. I'm helping the rest of the team. And there was a buzz until 11 o'clock, 12 p.m. 12 midnight. At 11 o'clock, I'm like, inside sales, go home. Some of the other people stayed until 1 a.m. There was just no way to stop. It was just the most insane, transformative news, which it was special though.
Now, the first game was at home. When you walked out into that stadium and looked around and said to yourself, holy, you know what? My life will never be the same. It has changed permanently. What went through your mind? Did that go through your mind, or was something else happen?
So there was a moment that I was there, and when we saw people just coming in the gates, I'm like, oh, this is different. This is real different. And that game was a game against Cruz Azul on July 21st. Can't forget it.
Right.
And
it was hot.
It was warm. It's definitely warm.
It was hot. I remember.
And you just felt a vibrant energy because we have a very Latin American community down here too, who love the game of football.
Yes.
But we never had the level that they were accustomed to. And now we bring who is arguably, for me, the greatest of all time. I would say for me, it's the greatest of all time.
Pretty much the GOAT.
I think other people would say that too.
I think so too. Yeah, I'm going to say it.
But to have that type of energy, and to have Sergio Busquets, and to have Jordi Alba.
And Beckham.
Yeah, I mean, David Beckham, obviously.
And Beckham. I mean, you've got a guy that, was Messi before Messi. So, I mean, you talk about the perfect storm. You experienced it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. My company, SBRnet, we collect data focused on sports fans. And for the last number of years, we've really seen a growth in the number of fans here in the United States for both MLS as well as international soccer. And not just, the international teams like Argentina, Mexico, and Colombia, but we've seen a big jump in Premier League. We've seen a big jump in Champions League. And of course, MLS also. So, again, it's got to be a life-changing experience. Gerard, I want to get you out of here, but I want to get you out of here with one last question.
Sure.
And that is kind of the big payoff. What advice do you have for students coming out of school over the next 2 or 3 years to help get their first job in sports?
I say this all the time. Collect people and collect knowledge. When I say collect people, they're not actually like trading cards. Like, you need to make sure you're doing it the right way. But build relationships, network, reach out to individuals rather than at the last minute being like, hey, hi, I need a job, please. That doesn't work. But if you reach out to industry professionals, you learn a lot from them and you maintain those relationships, you're going to collect the industry knowledge that you need to be wildly successful. They might seek you out if you really impress them with your curiosity, with your skill set, with your energy. You may find yourself having opportunities come to you, which the older you get in the career, the more successful you are, the more that becomes the case. And if not, you're putting yourself in the best position. And then outside of that, learn as much as you can. It may be from books, it may be from people, it may be from your courses, whatever it may be. Any way you can learn and collect those people, you're going to be wildly successful.
I think what you just said, though, about collecting people, there's so many students that I talk to that are just so shy about, I go to tons of conferences and I see students there, and I'm doing everything I can to encourage them to walk over to me and talk to me, because, look, I've been in the industry 25 years. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of things. And obviously I'm also in the data analytics side of things. So, but I think you are spot on, Gerard, with that idea. Collect as many people. Don't be afraid. Don't even be afraid to ask your parents, hey, do you know anybody? Because it's amazing, where you can find that, 2 degrees of separation kind of thing. I think I got the right number of degrees on that one.
Yeah.
Never sure.
No, and to your point, I would just say, when you're going through with people, you can't be everyone's best friend. But that doesn't mean you can't have a bunch of people that you're loosely connected with. When you talk to them every once in a while, you may talk to them once a year, once a quarter, once every 3 years, doesn't matter. That there is a good relationship there, and that goes a long way.
It's interesting, and I've seen this also in Melissa's career, but, also drag people with you that you feel, can be part of your team, that can be part of your village, because it takes a village, even, in your personal life, takes a village, but in your work life, it can really take a village, and understanding who you can trust.
100%.
When it comes to, hey, I want to thank Gerard D'Ambrosio III. He is currently the manager for ticket sales for Inter Miami, the MLS football club down here in South Florida. Of course, I'm down here in South Florida, here in Boca Raton. Of course, Gerard went to American University with his mutual professor, but my friend, Matt Winkler. And, this has been a great interview. Both Melissa and I really enjoyed it. And Gerard, would want to thank you very much for coming on My First Job in Sports.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. It was awesome. And hopefully everyone takes a lot away from it.
Thank you for tuning in to this edition of My First Job in Sports, presented by SBR Net. You can check out the video version on the SBR Net Video Corner on YouTube. You can also catch the audio version on all major podcast platforms. Just search for My First Job in Sports. My First Job in Sports is produced by Brad Maybe. You can connect with us on all social media platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, or check us out at sbrnet.com. Thank you for tuning in.